5th, 2025 meeting of the St. Petersburg Beach Budget and Finance Committee. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Member Polanowski?
Here.
Member Greiger?
Here.
Member Semiragic?
Here.
Member Allen?
Here.
We do have a quorum. I will say right as we were starting off the meeting that our chair for many years, Joanne Melodio, needed to resign from the board, so we have replaced her, and also Jerry Sarubi left the board, and we have replaced him. So we currently have no chair or vice chair. Mr. Semiragic is filling in today, so we probably should be a good idea to appoint a chair and vice chair today, so we can add that to the agenda when we come to that item. Thank you. Okay.
I'll make a motion to nominate John to be the chairman, since you do have the corporate memory of what's happened here for a number of years and served the community faithfully, so I would make that motion.
I would second that motion.
Oh, too. If you.
Okay, I'll call a roll call for the vote. Member Allen? Yes or no? Just
Yes.
Member Polanowski?
Yes.
Member Greiger?
Yes.
Member Semiragic?
No.
No.
Yes.
Motion carries.
You got outvoted.
We need your vote.
Yes.
And then a vice chair as well.
We need to nominate someone to be the vice chair. I nominate Colonel Greiger to be the vice chair.
I second that.
Member Polanowski?
Yes.
Member Greiger?
Yes.
Member Allen?
Yes.
Chair Semiragic?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Taking me with you, huh?
Down.
Any audience comments? Since there's no audience, there are no audience comments. We already added item 3B to the agenda, and that was just what we voted on.
We did, so we just need a motion to approve the amended agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
I second that motion.
Member Greiger?
Yes.
Member Allen?
Yes.
Member Polanowski?
Yes.
Chair Semiragic?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Items for discussion. We need to approve the minutes of the November 6th meeting. Who was here for the November? I was here for the, okay. I didn't have any problem with it.
No, I didn't have any problems with it.
I move that we approve the minutes of the November 6th, 2024 meeting as presented.
I second the motion.
Member Greiger?
Yes.
Member Allen?
Yes.
Member Polanowski?
Yes.
Chair Semiragic?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item is the financial and capital programs presentation by Andrew.
Looks like you're looking at me.
Yes.
I guess I'm supposed to do this one. All right, let me test 1, 2. See, we got Mike. Good. Well, let me give you a quick update. And we got 2 new members, so I'll just tell you who I am, and maybe I'll give you a little bit of the kind of the state of the department right now, so you all are kind of up to date on finance operations, and we can jump right into the presentation. So, I'm Andrew Laughlin. I'm actually the president and CEO of a company called Aclarion, and Aclarion provides outsourced accounting services and financial ERP software to local governments. We're based in Florida. I'm actually in Tampa, and I help a number of Pinellas communities in different capacities. On the service side, providing services ranging from outsourced finance director to accounting manager, helping with bank reconciliations, to helping as a payroll clerk, processing payroll, to a lot of different things in between, both me and my team. So here at the City of St. Pete Beach, I was engaged to be your finance director on an interim basis. I started in August of 2024. Serve some other communities in a similar capacity, namely City of Madeira Beach down the road. I actually just came from there. I did a short-term interim finance director stint from them starting in the summer of 2020, and I'm still there, so I guess it's not so short in a stint. So the services we do can range from just a very shortened period of time until a full-time CFO or whatever position they're trying to fill is completed. Other things we do are just project-based. Hey, get in there, help us achieve this, and then we're done. And then others can be something that may even start interim and then turn into a more longer-term engagement. Here at the City of St. Pete Beach, I was introduced to the finance team, was the finance director, helped oversee the completion and adoption of your 2025 hiring side. So the city has extended an offer to a new finance director. She's coming from Colorado as your full-time finance director in an employment capacity. So she's going to be starting remotely in March, and then eventually, and we'll work in a remote capacity for a bit, and then we'll transition here on site when she moves down completes the move from Colorado. But that's the plan there. So you do have, I'm your stopgap to keep the lights on and keep things going, and then moving into the full-time role with this new individual who you'll meet when she comes on board full-time. But it's been a pleasure serving the city and working with everybody, and you know, that's why I've told everyone I'm just here to help wherever there might be a need. And we do that both in the services side and the software side. So that's a little about me and kind of the history and where we are within the department. Still trying to, you know, play catch up. We did have a recent resignation of our accounting manager. Her last day is actually tomorrow. So another position that we will need to fill. So we're working through that and some transition activities around that. So I've got more consultants on my team that are helping come in to defray some of those duties and responsibilities away from the existing staff that already have full plates, and bring them on to my team to help, you know, keep things moving along as well, as we try to then work out a longer plan and bring in at least 1 or 2 more full-time hires in the finance department. But it's a universal challenge across government, across finance departments, trying to find, you know, good talent in the right position. So really is fortunately we're getting a finance director, and we'll continue to endeavor to get the right people in the right jobs for you know, the coming weeks and months as we try to do that. Any questions or concerns or anything you want to talk about on that on the operational side?
Is that a firm date that it's going to be no later than the end of March? Would that be March 30th
For the
audit?
The goal is March 31st. Statutorily, municipalities have, according to state statute, have until June 30 to issue their audit. Then we do have some stragglers who don't meet that deadline. They don't shut down the city and say you're now defunct. But you do eventually, we might get a notification, a letter from the Florida Joint Legislative Audit Committee, the JLAC, notifying you, hey, you have not submitted your audit report to the Florida Auditor General, to the state CFO. Please give us your plan of completion, and then you continue to work through the state on that plan to get that done. So last year the city did meet that state deadline, the June 30, but this year we want to accelerate that more to get March 31st. On this presentation, I actually have our Public Works Director that's going to be presenting with me. This is him calling me. Let me just, if you don't mind, just see if he's on his way.
Sure.
Hey, Camden.
Hey, Andrew.
You're on your way?
I'm on my way. It's 3:30, right?
3 o'clock, but you'll probably get on at 3:30, and I'll do my presentation till then. So yeah, as soon as you can, just head on over.
Okay, at the chambers?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I had 3:30 in my calendar.
All right, no worries.
I'll see you in a minute.
All right. So you got me for 20 minutes, and then we're going to do. So this is a finance and capital presentation, so I wanted to give you all on my end, if we can fire up that presentation. And first, any other questions on operating through budgeted revenues, on reserves at 9/30/25, so I got a nice schedule to walk through that. On reserves at 9/30/25, so I got a nice schedule to walk through that. We'll talk about some outstanding debt of the city, focus specifically on hurricane-related expenses and some of the related goods and services that were acquired that the city needed as a result of the hurricanes. And we'll be putting forth a mid-year budget amendment, evaluating in all departments, okay, where are we, through half of the year, budget versus actual, what were some of the unanticipated expenditures that we've incurred that we just can't absorb that within our departmental budgets. Some of that might be the hurricane-related stuff that we'll then bring to commission for ordinance adoption to pass a budget amendment. We'd like to only have to do one this year, and now they've got, a good picture of where things are at the department level, incurred versus budgeted, with then also a run out of predicted for the remainder of the fiscal year. That'll give us enough information to put together a good, sound budget amendment that'll go to the commission. But that's what I want to do in my next 15 minutes, and then Camden will jump in on his piece to talk through the capital program overview and storm recovery priorities.
Andrew, when would that mid-year budget amendment come out? The recommendation?
Not time certain, but I would imagine we would compile it probably by the sometime next month, and then if we either present it in a March meeting or in an April meeting, maybe the last meeting in March or the first meeting in April. I'd say that tentatively hasn't been confirmed, but that's kind of the idea.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so moving into hurricane-related expenses incurred. So what we have on Helene, this is what we've incurred thus far, is $1 million, about $1.5 million, more or less. Incurred basically means that we've received the goods or received the services, and we've perhaps made payment, or it's just in accounts payable waiting to be paid, versus committed, what we call like encumbered. Encumbered means that we'll have a purchase commitment with a certain vendor, and we'll issue a purchase order, let's say for $70,000, which goes through a workflow approval process within the city to then offer that provide that pre-approval authority to then say, yes, vendor, here's PO number 662 for $70,000, now go do the work, right? So that's encumbered, but may not necessarily be incurred if they haven't started yet. Or maybe they've incurred some of it, and then the rest is the remaining amount is what's remaining encumbered. But this is what we've actually incurred thus far. I don't necessarily say spent, because some of this may be still an AP that we haven't cut checks for. And so of this, we've got damage assessment services and the SCADA operations support. That's what our firm, I believe that's Kimley Horn, doing that for $233,000. They've done some damage assessment service around some of our key facilities and other infrastructure in the city. Mold mitigation, we've got that in multiple facilities. That's totaling $266,759 that we've had to do that. I think Rec Center, Warren Webster come to mind as two. I've got the details if you'd like me to pull that up as well. I think those were 4 different sites on the mold mitigation. And I can pull that up and give that to you in 30 seconds if you want more detail on that. The sanitary sewer support bypass pump system, $222,000. So as a result of the hurricane, that basically fried the electronics of the pump system. So we needed to put in a bypass to keep our pump system going to push our wastewater. So that was what that bypass is what was needed, and that's what we spent on that. We had a pool restoration for almost $57,000. To get the pool up and running, and that's good to go right now from my knowledge. And then we also have outsourced building inspection services with a firm that's helping us on a contractual basis for $167,000. And then on the Milton side, so Helene is the one that caused the most significant amount of damage. Milton did cause some damage, more wind damage. Helene, the way to look at it simply Helene water, Milton wind. But we basically have in our general ledger system, we have specific account codes, one for Helene, one for Milton. So that's how expenses get coded to one or the other based on applicability. So we had some landscaping that needed to be done. That was $154,000. We're splitting that Kimley Horn time on the damage assessment services and skate operations support. So we split that. The majority of Helene, we coded some of it to Milton. And then same thing on the sanitary sewer bypass pump monitoring services, $355,000. So split between the two storms. And then this is the encumbrance analysis. So we have a total amount encumbered of $6.2 million, and then total amount paid is $932,000. So that's off open encumbrance balances, basically. So the big differentiator here is what we've incurred in debris removal. So that's going to be the big expenses that are coming in. We've got a large encumbrance against that. Good news is that we've applied with the state. There we go. We've applied with the state and received monies in advance to cover what's called Category A or Cat A expenses, and debris removal is the main Cat A expense that's allowed. So we based that on a projection that we submitted that, I don't know how many weeks or months ago, to the state FDM, Florida Department of Emergency Management. Then they reviewed our calculations. Some of it was based on here's what we've incurred thus far, plus what we project out that will be incurred in debris-related expenses. And then when we submitted that, then they gave this, the state, ACH, the city, the 50% of those estimated costs. So that's good that we did get some money up front on hurricane-related expenses, because typically it all comes from FEMA, and that reimbursement process can be very long and drawn out and take years. So it's good that we've got a good chunk of money up front on the debris removal costs.
So on the, a couple slides ago, you said that you allocated some of the expenses from Helene to Milton. Is that correct?
Some that were potentially shared between the two, maybe both hurricanes caused the damage.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So say we didn't have Milton.
Mhm.
Is there a way that we can get the amount that Helene, the expense to take us up to 129 for Helene, the total expense, if Milton didn't have it happen? For example, if something happens in the future, we want to know how can we get 4 months down the road with our finances? It would be good to have that number.
Well, so if there was no Milton, then everything would just be coded to Helene, and we would just be working with one hurricane. So regardless, every penny that we're spending on hurricane-related expenses, which even includes staff time and analyst time on putting together, those are called Cat Z expenses, for example, on putting together the reimbursement packet to submit to FEMA to eventually get reimbursed. So there's all of our hard costs, expenses that are eligible for reimbursement, as well as even staff time in various arenas, is all subject to reimbursement, right? So the idea is, on a net basis, the city will ideally be coming out relatively neutral, but then you have the time that it takes, right? So there will be from when the city's incurring and paying for expenses, and some things that the state has paid for up front. We do have some state representatives here from various firms that are helping us even on collecting the data, damage assessment, putting together reimbursement packages, reimbursement information broken out by project to submit to FEMA in the format that they desire. So we've been getting good resources that came through for the state that the state's paying for. Other things we're paying for, we're documenting it, and then we're submitting it for reimbursement.
If the event happened again 2 years down the road, we're thinking about 2.2 million times the factor, inflation factor on that?
In terms of the cost of a hurricane?
Yes.
I mean, technically, I would say the cost of the hurricane, I mean, everything that we have encumbered here of over $6 million on Helene, and then 1.2 million on Milton. So, and, you know, this encumbrance balance could increase as well. I mean, so,
Well, to get us to where we were on January, I just want to say, okay, we have to have this much in our bank account to get us 4 months out, because it seems like we have a lot of progress from the end of January, from probably mid-January. So what do we have to have to get us 4 months out from another event happening?
in terms of cash in bank.
Upfront, yes, upfront cash, because I know we're going to get reimbursed.
Sure. And I do have a slide on what we have currently, what we had in cash and investments. And right now, liquidity doesn't really concern me, I think, and I can move forward just to see it real quick. That this is what our, 15.9 million. Typically, you'd look at, okay, what is about operating expenses, hold at least 20% of that. I think I sent, when we did our previous presentation, I provided, okay, here's what our reserve looks like, here's typical recommendation from the Government Finance Officers Association. We were well reserved going into this hurricane. I don't have strong liquidity concerns currently. Now, we are going to be suffering revenue loss in parking, or my main concerns on revenue loss will be in parking, and then my other big one will be in ad valorem taxes. Not currently, but I think I went over this in last presentation, that through March 31st, property owners will have the ability to submit a DR 460 online to the Pinellas County Property Appraiser's Office, which will basically be a request for a partial refund of their property taxes due to that property being vacant because of the storm. And so then they'll go through that application process. That's all handled through the property appraiser's office. They provide documentation to evidence that that property was uninhabited during that time. And then those refunds get issued. The city won't be paying it, but we'll be netting against those refunds against future property tax collections that we have this summer. And then,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
go ahead.
The DR 460, that's only for uninhabitable properties?
Yeah.
And is there another, something that people's whose property values have been severely impacted, and our businesses as well, that their businesses have been severely impacted? Is there some kind of relief that they can apply for also?
Yes. I saw that discussed on a presentation from the property appraiser, but I can't remember just what the procedure is. But that
Okay.
was an item that they talked about.
I think that's essential that we get that out to our community, any kind of
Taxable
tax
value.
relief that property owners and our businesses can take advantage of.
The link is actually in the presentation,
Oh, great.
and in this, the handout, Andrew's presentation.
Yeah, I said 460, DR 465. Yep, so that's the link right there at the bottom.
And I already printed the form out. And
Yep, and so if you just go on that there's good FAQ on the property appraiser's website, pcpao.gov,
Thank you.
where you can learn more information, what the application process is, go through the application process, put in your name, your parcel ID, and it's basically an online electronic form that you go through to fill out and complete.
Thank you.
And then, as I'll just say, given your concern on cash, I also have an agenda item on this next regular meeting next week to request from Commission to apply for the emergency bridge loan program offered through the state. And that is specifically to allow this to be used for municipalities for continued operations when they suffer revenue loss. So it's not meant to fund a big capital project. It's intended for continuing to fund operating expenditures of the city. And then we just have to document, here is our current and future projected revenue loss as a result of the hurricanes. We go through an application process, submit that, and then here's the best part, it's an interest-free loan that we will receive from the state. And only principal repayments due, I think it's over a 10-year horizon, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm chomping at the bit to apply for that and get that money quickly. Is there a possibility even for principal forgiveness? It's not stated on the website, but you never know, right?
Yeah.
So I'm all about getting interest-free money if it's available.
Absolutely.
And we have the justification for that. So I would be surprised if commission would shoot that down. I think that's on consent agenda for this next meeting. And as soon as that goes through consent, I'll be taking the initiative to apply for that on the city's behalf with the two biggies I mentioned, property tax revenue loss and parking revenue loss. Trying to put together based on historical perspective and then, anticipated what we anticipate to see in the future. The DR 465 and the property taxes, that one's going to be a bit of a shot in the dark. I'm not really sure how many property owners are going to be, and I haven't faced this in the past, are going to be submitting that and what that's going to look like. But as you can see on this slide, I've got, I think, just a percentage, maybe it was about 10%, forecasted revenue reduction based on what we'll see as an infusion of those DR 465 forms that have been approved. So between healthy reserves that we had going into this fiscal year, despite the hurricanes, and receiving money up front, I can get that total figure to you. I think it was somewhere 4 to 6 million maybe. Or maybe 3 to 4 million on the 50% estimated of the debris removal. So we've got that cash in bank now, which is great, to help offset the cost that we're incurring that we're not going to get reimbursed for a while. Makes me feel a lot better on our cash position currently. Okay, so then this is just the encumbrances for both. We went through that. Then this is just the revenue loss, giving you just kind of a little estimate of original to revised. And then here's the detail behind it with explanations. We already talked about ad valorem. Parking, pretty obvious. We have temporary closure of lots. We have just reduced traffic around the area due to, loss of business activity and businesses not open, that we hope to see a pickup in the spring and summer, that parking revenue will recover, but we're definitely seeing a dip. And then other taxes, franchise fees, a little bit here on, we have utility taxes, we've got communication services taxes, so, you're canceling your subscriptions to telecom-related services that you don't get hit the CST. That'll affect, that type of revenue that comes into the city. I'm not expecting it's overly significant, but again, we're going to look at that and see the history, and I'll be a part of my application process that goes in to apply for that emergency bridge loan. And then other revenues, we've got rentals, sports, leagues, various recreation related program activities that we'll see some revenue loss from that. And then we talk about here's our cash and investment balance. That was September 30, 2024. It's been relatively stable. And then here's that reserve analysis I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. So this available fund balance, 9/30/2023, that is what was from audited financial statements. Then we have the year through year ended September 30, 2024. That's already ended. So taking that data, this is what we had in revenues versus expenses. So you take the difference between that plus your available fund balance at 9/30/23 gives us our projected available reserves. Obviously, that 2024 data is unaudited. We're going through that process now. And then take in your projected revenue reduction plus the what we had budgeted in revenues and transfers in 25 and budgeted expenditures in 20 and transfers out in 25. That's where we're now landing at the projected at the end of fiscal year 2025, not taking into account any actual results. And then here's our estimated available fund balance at 9/30/2025. And that's for each fund. So you can see where the concerns are arising are more in our enterprise funds, where we have seen some infrastructure neglect and the need for some large capital improvement projects. You can see in wastewater fund, 15 million, a lot of for a pump station, that you'll hear more of that as in Camden's section of the presentation. But we are going through a process to do a comprehensive rate study as well for all these various user fees, so we can right-size that to what the true, not only operating, but capital commitments are within the city of St. Pete Beach now and over a long-term horizon, so we make sure that those rates align well with the needs of the city. Then this is just giving you a little bit on outstanding debt as of September 30, 2024. So we've got a total of about $40 million that was outstanding as of September 30, 2024, between governmental revenue notes, and I give you some descriptions of each. And then we have some leases payable, and then the enterprise side, stormwater improvement bond from 2015, wastewater utility revenue bond from 2020, and then an SRF loan, that's the state revolving fund loan, that's Florida, through the state of Florida program for the master lift station from 2005, and then a wastewater pollution control facilities in 2020, that's the 12.7 million there. Interest rates range about 2% to up to 5% on some of this debt. Like the bigger ones, that 12 million on that state revolving fund, that's actually 0.22%, so that's really low.
That's nice.
So the biggest debt that we have outstanding, we do have a low interest rate on that. Principal and interest. So principal and interest payments, interest is about $596,000 that's coming up. That's in fiscal year 25. Principal, about 1.5 million in principal payments for each of these issuances in this fiscal year. So about 1.5 million almost principal, about $500,000 in interest on this outstanding debt. No immediate plans to issue debt. Certainly things are being contemplated. We got a massive, fire station 22, potential complete reconstruction project that it's currently it's under evaluation, but no decisions have been made on anything yet on go-forward plan and how to fund it. But potentially a debt issuance could be on the table depending on the project and the need.
Andrew, I got a question for you. Since your firm is well-versed in various municipalities, is that principal to interest ratio about normal for our debt?
I mean, I would say so, just looking at the interest rates, right? If there's any interest rates that really jumped out at me, a lot of this I'm seeing like 1.89% on that wastewater utilities revenue bond, 2.95% for the stormwater improvement bond 2015. So I'm liking all the interest rates. But we also look at, we have a financial advisor that will evaluate this and look at what's in the market, what's callable at what time, and then based on the call provisions, what it might make sense to refund the debt. So we're taking an active look at that. But nothing concerns me with this city, even with the amount of debt, as well as the interest versus principal that we're incurring.
Thank
Do
you.
we have a credit rating? Excuse me, do we have a credit rating?
No, we would obtain a credit rating if we're going to seek public debt. So there's a cost to that and a little time, but if that's something that we've said, let's do this, we want to build a new fire station facility, it's $15 million. Do we go bank debt? Do we go public debt? We're going to get a better rate going public debt. I'm just like, because it's a lot more administrative work, but If we get the better rates, a better deal, then yeah, we'll go through a multi-layered process, get a credit rating, and go through through all the legal administrative elements to issuing that.
Did we see any issues with?
No, I don't think, I mean, no, I think we'll they'll obviously look, okay, what's getting, what's collateralized, what are we pledging to the debt, and then just looking at the financial health overall of the city. And again, as I think I've expressed to you in the last meeting, no, I don't really have concerns for the governmental activities, but when you look at business type activities and look at some of our enterprise funds, I do think looking at revenues that are just barely meeting operating expenses and not building up reserves for capital commitments is what's of concern to me in the long term. Well, that's perfect segue right into our capital program overview. So I want to actually turn that over to Camden. Maybe, Camden, do you want to just sit here? That would be easiest. They're already used to tilting their neck. Unless you want Camden up at the front, or what's best?
Well, then we don't have to tilt our neck.
Sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. For the record, my name is Camden Mills, and I serve as the Public Services Director. So appreciate your time this afternoon. Just want to give you a brief update on our capital program overview. How can I get that back up? Oh, okay. So we'll go over the scope of the preliminary damage assessment that we performed to date for the two storms, give you kind of a summary on all the infrastructure and city-owned assets that were impacted. We'll briefly go over kind of the funding assistance process that we're working through right now with insurance and FEMA, and then go over the fiscal year 25 capital improvement plan to go over the status on the projects that were adopted as part of that budget. So our damage assessment scope, we relied on city staff as well as some outside consultants, contractors, and professional engineers. We deployed these consultants and our city staff immediately after Hurricane Helene, so we were able to differentiate the impacts from the two storms. We were able to complete the damage assessment before Milton came, and then we did a second assessment after Milton. That's pretty crucial as we work through submitting projects to FEMA, that we differentiate between the two storms. But as you can see, as far as city-owned assets and infrastructure, we looked at everything as far as our facilities, marine structures, our parks, our stormwater and wastewater, as well as our streets. Overall, our preliminary damage estimate is coming out to about $20 million. Now, keep in mind, these numbers are preliminary. These were just the initial cost estimates that were done from kind of those windshield damage assessments. As we work through the process with coordinating with our insurance adjusters and with FEMA, these numbers will be adjusted, but this kind of gives you a good idea on the scope of all the damage that we incurred from these storms. This is just that same information shown in a pie chart view, so you can see that, majority of the damage that we sustained was to our wastewater infrastructure and to our city-owned facilities.
Got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
That damage, was that damage due to the storm, or was it due to the status of the wastewater system? For instance, the age of it, the infrastructure,
The condition.
conditioning, the maintenance done. Can you give us a synopsis of that?
So it was damage caused by the storm, but of course, like deferred maintenance could have played into that. Something may have been damaged that may not necessarily have been if it was, in a different condition. But this is specific to what was damaged storm, so comparing pre-storm versus post-storm.
Okay.
Our funding assistance process, so our first step is to go to insurance. Any of our infrastructure assets that are insured, that's our first step, is to submit our damage estimates to insurance. The stage that we're at right now in the process is all of our data has been submitted, and insurance is starting to come back with their estimates, and so now we're in that back and forth of trying to justify what we submitted. For instance, on our wastewater lift stations, we submitted damage for 18 of our lift stations that we own. They agreed with about 85% of the damage that we reported, so now we provided further justification for that extra 15%. So that process will be going on in the next few months, working with their adjusters, and then the next step would be with FEMA public assistance.
Is it 21 stations?
21 stations total, yes.
Thank you.
And yeah, three of them are the larger pump stations, and then 18 of them are the just the smaller lift station facilities. So insurance is our first step, then FEMA public assistance, and then third will be alternative funding sources, whether that's through appropriations, grants, or some of the bonds and loans that Andrew touched on. This diagram here is just kind of show you the flow chart of the process for reporting damage to FEMA and getting those into projects. So a key component up there at the end of the phase 1 is that recovery scoping meeting. That happens after we had submitted all of our damage to FEMA. They assign a project manager, which is the PDMG, that will be assigned to us through this entire process. So we had that recovery scoping meeting in January. Now we're into phase 2. The box that's shown here in red is currently where we're at with the site inspections for damage. So that process is we are scheduling the meetings with FEMA so they can bring out their inspector, and then they assess all the facilities that we reported. So right now, we completed our inspections of the Shuffleboard, Shackdown, and Pass-A-Grill, as well as our Fire Station 22. Our lift stations are scheduled over the next couple weeks. So we're continually trying to get those facilities and site inspections scheduled with FEMA. After that, there'll be a similar back and forth with insurance where we come to a consensus on the costs and damages, and then we'll move forward with final costing and getting those projects obligated. So as you can see, it is going to be a pretty lengthy process working with FEMA. You know, these projects will be something that'll linger on, I would guess, you know, for the next few years.
Can I ask you a question on that? When it comes to the site inspections and the government sending the representatives down, do you find that, is it cumbersome? Is it on schedule? Is it something where you make a request and they fulfill that request when they feel? What's a sense of your scheduling so that those inspections for damage from FEMA are complete?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it seems to date it's about 2 weeks out. So when we request an inspection, we're typically able to get that on the books about 2 weeks from that date. That's how it's been with what we've requested so far with the lift stations and the fire station and the Shuffleboard Shack. So they have been able to accommodate those requests pretty quickly on that side of things. So I've been pleased with that process. Where it gets a little bit cumbersome is the actual site inspections themselves. For instance, when we did Fire Station 22, it was 8 hours one day and then 6 hours the next day, and it was a guy literally walking around with a pen and paper, you know, drawing everything. So that process is a little more cumbersome, but I'm open to it. I want them to catch every single nook and cranny, so I'm not trying to push them, but it is a little bit cumbersome.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just going to get into each of the categories and highlight our facilities just so you can kind of see the rough dollar magnitude that we're assigning to these, and there's some images here too that you'll see on some of the damages sustained. So for our facilities, majority of the damage was caused from the flooding from Helene, especially on the first floor of some of our buildings. The Shuffleboard Shack and Mary Pier Bait Shack were condemned, substantially damaged. Our community center and the Suntan Arts Center received a majority of the damage. We did receive, you know, damage in some fashion to all of our facilities. When Milton came through, as Andrew mentioned, mostly with the wind, that's where we started to see some of the roof damage with Milton. So here's our Mary Pier Bait Shack. This facility is insured. So you'll see on all these slides moving forward in the blue box, there's a check if that facility is insured, and then there's a check if we are pursuing FEMA, and if it's not, then we put an X in there. So kind of just comparing, is insurance an option, is FEMA an option, and is this project already programmed into our capital improvement plan? Some of our restrooms at our various parks, again, these are insured, and we are pursuing a FEMA claim for these. Our city hall, not too much damage there, mostly some soffit and some roof tiles. But again, that facility is insured, and we are pursuing FEMA. I added a note in here that we did have budgeted in our fiscal year 25 program to start the design for an HVAC replacement. So we do plan on continuing with that project. The community center or our rec center, those buildings sustained the most amount of damage. There was some water intrusion that came underneath the concrete slabs that really damaged some of the foundational structure. But pretty much everything that was in that first floor level got flooded out. So like the gym floor, that'll need to be replaced. Again, this facility is insured, and we're also pursuing a FEMA project as well. Our Fire Station 22. This is a facility that we're proposing some mitigation measures. Right now, our plan would be to demolish this facility and rebuild new. That was a project that was already in the works in our long-term capital plan. But just saying to bring the building back up to pre-storm conditions, and then adding in the factor of bringing it up to current building codes or current, fire safety codes. The existing facility really didn't fit the needs of our fire station operations. So we would be proposing to demo and rebuild if we can. So we're pursuing, alternative funding sources in addition to insurance and FEMA to try to make that project feasible. Noted that there is $600,000 budgeted for fiscal year 25 to continue the architectural and engineering design for that project. So we are continuing with that.
Got a question for Andrew, on that other slide there. That $2 million reimbursable state appropriation, is there a time limit for us to utilize that state appropriation?
You would know that best.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I think if there is a time limit, we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of that and we don't lose that appropriation due to it just falling out of our scope of view.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that $2 million is specifically dedicated for construction funding too, so we couldn't, put it towards that design.
Generally, within the agreement, there is a proposed end date and a schedule, and then you can always request an extension, the circumstances. I'm not sure on the details of this one.
Jenny, can we capture that as a note for the commissioners to make sure that we have a follow-up date on that so we don't lose that appropriation?
Yes, sir. That's a good point.
We've done that in the past.
Fire Station 23, this facility sustained some damage. Luckily, this is elevated more than the other fire stations, so it didn't quite sustain as much damage, but we are pursuing insurance and FEMA on this one. Our Paradise Grill, again, a majority of the damage was from the flooding, the sand inundation, and the flooding elevation to some of our electrical components.
I'm happy to report the Paradise Grill is open.
Yes, it is.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I've been there. Yay.
Good news.
Yes.
Our Public Works facility, we received a lot of damage on our first floor bays from Milton, so we've tore out, our drywall. A lot of our equipment that was in that facility was damaged as well. That building was scheduled for a roof replacement anyway. That was something that was already in our capital improvement plan. So how we're proposing to tackle that project is, work with insurance and FEMA to bring it up to pre-storm conditions. but still move forward with that designed roof replacement. The design for that is complete, so we've given that to the contractor that will be doing the repair work. And then what our thoughts are is, what insurance won't cover that new capital portion, so we'll have insurance cover what they can, and then the city will use the budgeted CIP funds to cover the difference.
Sounds smart.
Our Site Beach Public Library. So this facility, our preliminary damage assessment noted some potential erosion around the foundation. So that's why you see the repair work estimated at over $200,000. We still need to do some further structural analysis to confirm if there actually was that damage was sustained. So right now this is a conservative estimate, but that number may come down as we analyze further. Our Don Vista Suntan Art Center, as mentioned previously, this was one of the facilities that sustained quite a bit of damage. Majority of that was from Milton on the roof. This project is designated historic, so any of our facilities that were impacted that are designated historic, we're going through the process of working with our Historic Preservation Board and getting their recommendations on how to proceed, and then we'll bring those to the City Commission. Our Warren Webster, again, this is another building that was designated historic, received a significant amount of flooding from Helene. This facility was also damaged in prior storms, so we have some open projects with FEMA for those prior storms, so we're kind of working through the coordination there to differentiate, what damage was from Idalia and what damage is from these more recent storms. But again, this building is insured and is eligible for the FEMA public assistance. Our shuffleboard shack, unfortunately, this building was hit pretty hard, so this will need to be, we're proposing to demolish and rebuild, but again, working through that process with our Historic Preservation Board. Next, we'll get into some of our marine structures. So these are our seawalls, our piers, and our docks. Not much damage from the wind, so a majority of this was caused by the force of the storm surge from Helene. The seawall number here at 272, I foresee this increasing as we get more into our damage assessment analysis, but some of the major areas that we've identified is Paso Grill Way, Fisherman's Park, Sunset Park, and 36th Avenue. But we are assessing all of the public street end seawalls to be captured in that damage assessment for FEMA to look at. These are specifically that Paso Grill Way is a critical item for us to try and get scheduled for FEMA site inspection as soon as we can. Our seawalls are not insured, so the FEMA public assistance is going to be our main route for these repairs.
Was that seawall replaced when the road repairs, the major work was done on Paso Grill Way?
It was not.
No.
Nope. So the seawall from 1st Avenue to 12th Avenue was split into two different phases. And pretty much just split into half. Phase 1, which addressed the more critical areas, was just recently completed right before the storms.
That's 8th to 12th, isn't it?
Yes, yep, exactly. And in front of like the Mary Pierre Bait Shack, there's some sections there. So that project got completed, but the sections of the old seawall is really where we saw a lot of the damage, and the areas where the new seawall ties into that old seawall. From an infrastructure standpoint, it's concerning because what we've observed is base material, sand material that's helps support the sidewalk that's on the upland side of the seawall. We're observing it leaking through joints in that seawall, and so we're observing some material loss. Which, so we want to prioritize that phase 2 project to get done sooner than later before those failures start to creep up into that roadway.
Yeah.
Cameron, can I tell you that the seawall on the 12th Avenue, where it's adjacent there, you can actually see where the sidewalk is becoming undermined.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly the occurrence. That soil material is just leaking through and getting back into the water, and it's that sidewalk is floating in some areas. So we want to try to address this before that starts creeping into the roadway.
Yeah.
that's a new section, so I didn't expect that to be happening at the new section.
Right, and it could be, leaking through the joints in the old section adjoining to it. It could play into that as well.
Thank you.
But it is, the whole thing needs to be brought up to par. Piers and docks, First Avenue, 7th Avenue, and Mary Pier, where the major damage was sustained. First Avenue Pier has some damage out on the platform itself and the railing, but also the walkway getting to that pier. Those facilities aren't insured, so we're pursuing FEMA public assistance on those. Our dune walkovers sustained some damage to those as well, mostly cleanup efforts of just getting sand out of those walkovers. Again, those aren't insured. We are pursuing a FEMA claim. We had money budgeted in fiscal year 25 to repair some of the walkovers at 51st and 52nd Avenue. So we've put a project out to bid to replace those ones as well as the ones that were damaged from the storm. So that project will be a combination of city CIP funds as well as FEMA assistance. Operations, this was, our vehicles, the equipment within our facilities, as well as some of our IT operations equipment. So we've inventoried that, mostly from the different departments and staff had reported all of their damaged equipment and vehicles, and that falls into this category here. So majority of that was caused by the flood damage. Luckily, our fleet vehicles and our IT equipment is insured, so we're pursuing that route as well as FEMA. Our parks and pavilions, overall, was made out all right compared to some of our other damage. Again, Helene with the storm surge caused the majority of the damage. But Upham, Egan, Lazarillo, McKenna, Vina, Hurley, and Bella Vista were ones that sustained a majority of the damage that we've seen.
Can I make a comment for the commissioners on that, and Andrew and you? Is that we go ahead and utilize the tourist development tax. Part of that tourist development tax does allow us to request an access to those funds for parks. And I think that we've got some great parks here that the tourists do utilize. We ought to reach out and try to get the county to provide us those funds to repair those things, especially things like the pavilions and the infrastructure needs that would support tourism. I think that would be an easy case for us to build.
Understood. No, I appreciate that suggestion. As I understand it now, the only TDT money we see is for beaches. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But let's take advantage of it. It's written right into the law, so we should be able to access
They might
those.
pay for the walkovers, beaches.
Mm. Okay. Next, we'll get into some of our underground infrastructure, so stormwater. Majority of the damage, again, was from Helene with the storm surge, just having sand and grit and debris wash into our underground system, our manholes and our pipes, and minimal damage sustained from Milton. We are proposing a project with FEMA, since that underground stormwater instruction is not insured. We're pursuing the FEMA project for a system-wide cleaning and inspection, which has a twofold purpose. The cleaning will be to, remove all the storm damage, any debris and sand that was put into the system. And then the inspection piece of that is as they're going in and cleaning and flushing that system, we're driving cameras through the system as well, so we can analyze the current state of the infrastructure, which will help us identify additional damage that we can't see, from the surface, but also will help us prioritize asset management long-term, so we can work that into our capital program.
Now, we did talk about that, and we prioritized that during the capital improvement program 2 meetings ago. Do you think, is there any way that we could ask FEMA as an assessment, as one of their inspections, to go ahead and do that complete inspection of the system? Because we don't know the depth of the damage yet unless we can televise and look at all of it.
That's exactly what we're trying to do right now. So initially, FEMA's feedback was, well, we can't. They're fine with the cleaning part of it, but they weren't on board with funding the inspection part of it because they're saying, well, we don't want to just send you guys on a wild goose chase to find damage. But I think we are in a good position to justify that. Hey, this structure is full of sand. So is the next upstream structure. So you can interpolate that. The pipe is full of sand too. So I think we're in a pretty good position to justify that system-wide cleaning is needed and the inspection is needed too, so we can identify the remaining damage that happened.
Yeah.
So I feel confident that we will be able to move forward with this project. Our streets, so with our streets and how we evaluated that and reported to FEMA is we separated out Gulf Way between First Avenue and 22nd, just because that's going to be a pretty large capital project. And then all the rest of the damage to our streets, we grouped into a second project. So what you'll see here is pavement, sidewalks, and curb, and as well as signage. So again, majority of the damage sustained here was from the storm surge and some erosion around those facilities.
Can I ask you about the wall structure that collapsed down there in the Pass Grill along Gulf Way there? Part of it's intact, part of it's not intact. Where does that come into play here?
We would propose that as part of that Gulf Way project. So with that one, we're looking at full width right away, really from curb up to the dunes. We would propose to demo the rest of that wall and then replace it with a more structural wall. What was there previously was more of like a decorative. It didn't really have like a footing or any like structural foundation to it. So we would propose to construct a something that's more structural and also move it onto that other side of the sidewalk. So it's more in line with how that wall is, I think, north of like 9th Avenue.
So it would be on the west side of the sidewalk, so in other words,
Correct, yeah.
pedestrians would be walking on the other side of the wall.
Yep, and it would keep the sand off of our sidewalk and the road.
Good.
So here's the majority of the roadway damage other than Gulf Way that was sustained. This picture here on the bottom right, I think, is what you were referencing at that Pass Grill seawall here, where we're seeing the soil being undermined and washing through the seawall out into the bay. And then Gulf Way is, again, that's going to be its own major project here. Total, we're estimating at about $2.2 million, but I could see that number increasing. We will be proposing some mitigation measures with this project as well. Rather than just replacing the asphalt, we do want to go down and improve and replace the base material as well, so we can get the longest life out of that new asphalt as we can. We are exploring some like temperature control treatments for the asphalt, so it'll be more friendly with people that are walking or walking their dogs. As well as some permeable type asphalt, but just trying to work in as many mitigation measures as we can, since this is going to be a major project that we want to last decades to come. Currently, we have done some temporary asphalt repairs to a few of the intersections that were severely damaged, just so that'll hold us over until we can come online with the capital project. This isn't insured, so we will pursue FEMA public assistance. And then our parking stations, we separate those out separately, but those were inundated with sand or just blown over, so we are proposing to replace those, and they are insured.
So they're not replaced yet. So how are we collecting parking fees?
Some of them have been repaired, but not all of them.
Okay.
And then as well as signage too. We're missing a lot of our signage, that has the QR code.
Yes.
So that's something we are prioritizing to get that signage up in place. Even if we don't have parking stations, if we can get a sign that has that scanned QR code before spring break, because that is a big, revenue source for our season.
Good.
Unfortunately, our typical process for this would be to print the signs in-house out of public services. Our sign shop was damaged from the storm, so we're working through getting that sign shop back up and running, while also getting quotes from vendors to print the signs themselves. But as you can imagine, a lot of these sign shop vendors around here are pretty busy, with
sure.
other cities and counties too. But that is a big priority right now for the Public Services Department, is trying to get those parking signs back up as soon as we can, so we can start seeing that revenue.
Something to be mentioned about QR codes on those parking signs. The Pinellas County Sheriff's Office produced a video that showed that there were individuals making their own QR codes and placing them on those types of parking signs. So an awareness of that, or Cameron, as we make those signs, if we can make them so maybe it's difficult to have another sticker adhere to something like that, so that we protect people who come to visit us and utilize those facilities. Also, maybe we might want to introduce some way that city employees would check those signs as they check for maintenance on the machines, or looking at the machines going in there.
Well, the parking people go by every day.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
To check and make sure there's not those stickers put on.
Yeah.
And that's always,
Yeah, because
in today's environment, that's going to happen.
It is, and maybe we can
Exactly.
mitigate some of that just by paying a little bit of attention to it, so that somebody doesn't say, well, we went to St. Pete Beach and we got a $300 parking bill.
Okay. Next, we'll get into our wastewater infrastructure. So again, this is where a majority of the damage was sustained. Similar to our stormwater, it was a lot of just sand and debris that washed into our system. From Helene, with the level of elevation of the flood damage that was sustained, impacted a lot of our electrical equipment and control panels. And then from Milton, when we lost our power, that shorted out some of our electrical equipment as well. Pump Station 1, that facility sustained quite a bit of damage. As I'm sure you're aware, we already had a capital project underway to rehabilitate this facility. So we're moving forward with that project as is. It did have mitigation measures proposed in there. We were going to install a new backup generator with a fuel storage tank that would be elevated above base flood elevation, and we would also be replacing our control panel equipment with flood-tight hatches and elevating that as well. So we have reported these damages to FEMA and insurance, but we're continuing with that capital improvement project. Where we're at in the stage of that project right now is all equipment purchases have purchase orders and have been placed. So right now we're just working on getting delivery dates for some of those long lead items. For instance, that backup generator is about 70 weeks to come. So this project will be like
70 weeks.
70 weeks. So this will be,
Generators.
an 18-month project. We're going to try to do as much work as we can as parts come available. We're already seeing delivery like of some of our pump and wet well equipment. That backup generator will kind of be the last piece to that project. The generator that's out there now is functional and has been repaired after the storm. So we're thinking of creative ways to try to move the construction of that project as fast as we can, knowing that that piece is going to come in at the end. But some of that equipment does have long lead times to be manufactured.
Cameron, so what's the impact now? We're looking at a bunch of development happening here on the beach. So if Pump Station 1 is not up to standards, then how is that proposed development going to impact our ability to move the wastewater?
So right now we do have functioning pumps in the wastewater system, which does have sufficient capacity to keep our operations flowing. The current
As currently stated?
As currently stated. So our current Pump Station 1 and the pumps that are in place now are sized for build-out of the community redevelopment district, but not complete build-out of the city per the comp plan. So the new pumps that'll be installed as part of this project will allow the city to have full capacity for build-out according to that comp plan.
We're increasing the capacity.
We're increasing capacity.
Although before the hurricane, we said we had enough. But obviously,
We didn't.
Quarry Avenue now, the end of Quarry is taking off. So there's more, it's going to get more buildings, more condos. More hotels.
Correct, and we have a $2 million grant for this project from the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. And in our grant application, we were proposing, we submitted our comp plan, and some of those developments that were at the time were proposed to come online. So that grant was tied to growth and capacity needs.
When do we expect Pump Station 1 to be fully functional, besides the 70-week delay there for the...
I think probably about 18 months for the project to be complete fully, but I would say probably 12 months to have it substantially complete.
Okay.
Does the subaqueous fit into this, the replacement? Are we still talking about that?
We are, yep.
We've been
Yes,
talking
sir.
about that for 15 years.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Replacing the subaqueous line, which is the line that runs from Pump Station 1 under Boca Ciega Bay to where we pump the wastewater to the city of St. Petersburg for treatment.
Yep.
So the plan is still to build another line adjacent to it and have both available.
So once it gets across the Boca Ciega, is there any issue with the pumping going to the actual facility?
Well, we've had issues with the pipes downstream. Last year, I think it was last year, we had a serious problem. We didn't even know that those pipes existed in the city of St. Petersburg, that they were our responsibility. But things like that used to creep up on a regular basis. Like, we didn't know we had pipes here or there.
So do we have a pump over in St. Petersburg?
No,
The St. Pete does.
St. Pete Beach doesn't.
no.
St. Pete Beach does not, nope. So we send our flows, that subaqueous force main goes over to the Yacht Club Estates in Treasure Island, and then meets, I believe that's 75th Avenue there, where it ties into Treasure Island's force main, and then goes into South Pasadena to St. Petersburg's lift station 61. So that lift station 61 in St. Pete services all of St. Pete Beach, all of Treasure Island, and I believe all of South Pasadena as well.
And how did that function?
That's fine. That facility is in good shape. They have done some repairs to it recently, but as capacity-wise, it does have sufficient capacity.
Do we have any control over inspections on that, or
No,
just St. Petersburg?
mainly St. Petersburg. We do work with them as part of like our true-up analysis on what we pay them to treat our wastewater flows. So they are supposed to program like long-term capital improvements into that rate as we're getting charged, but we aren't currently inspecting that, no. And that force main project, where we're at with that right now is we had engineering consultant do a preliminary engineering analysis to evaluate different route options if we wanted to keep the same route as it is currently or look at some other options. The engineer that performed that analysis also recently performed a similar force main analysis for Treasure Island and the pipe that they have that ties into ours, and also the St. Petersburg Lift Station 61. So they have a pretty good grasp on the system as a whole. Just as about 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with them to go over some of the preliminary route options that they're exploring. My recommendation is that we look into some redundancy. What we'll probably propose for this project is to bore a new force main and then line the existing force main. So that way we have a little bit extra redundancy in the two. And then another benefit that I would foresee if we did construct that new bore is when we pop up, we could go directly to St. Petersburg's pump station plant without having to tie into Treasure Island's force main. Because right now, our pumps are, I wouldn't say oversized, but their size is very large because of that head pressure that we hit when we're competing with the flows of Treasure Island. So we can remove that component and go directly ourselves to St. Pete. That'll give us additional capacity within our system. So right now we plan on completing that preliminary engineering analysis this fiscal year. And then I think we had planned out in, 27 is when we were going to start the actual design of that project and then construct it around 2029. But due to the impacts of the storms, I would recommend we try to expedite that project to be as soon as we can. Right now, it's projected that that pipe has about 10 years of useful life left, but I'd rather not wait till the very end of that.
Agreed.
What do you anticipate that cost would be to have the new bore, not reline, but a new bore coming online then and not competing with
About 20 to 30 million.
30 million, yeah.
Yep. And then next here is the lift station for the remaining lift stations that we have. So the other 20 separate from pump station 1. Again, similar type of damage for electrical equipment. Those control panel boxes were flooded. And then a lot of just sand and grit into our system that damaged some of our pumps. Luckily, those facilities are insured. We are pursuing FEMA as well. And then three of the lift stations, we are proposing some additional mitigation measures. Those 3 lift stations serve our critical facilities, so our City Hall, our Public Works, and our fire station. So the idea with those mitigation is we would elevate the control panels, flood-proof the wet wells, and the goal there would be, if another storm surge event comes through, that we would be able to keep some of our critical facilities online. And we're exploring mitigation options at the other areas as well, but unfortunately, just due to where some of those lift stations are located and some of the site constraints, we're just limited in what improvements we can propose. So some of them we'll be bringing back to pre-storm conditions, but where we can, we'll be proposing mitigation efforts. Sanitary sewer system cleaning inspection, similar to as I described with the stormwater. We're proposing a project to televise, inspect, and clean all of our underground pipes. And again, this will help to identify the storm damage and prioritize repairs, but it will also help out with our long-term asset management planning. This infrastructure is not insured, so we'd be pursuing a FEMA project. We did have $375,000 budgeted in fiscal year 25 capital improvement program for portions of the sewer system cleaning and inspection. So we'll leverage that CIP funding if needed to help support this project. So I think it'll be similar to the stormwater where FEMA will cover the cleaning, but we may be responsible for covering some of the inspection.
I think we looked at that as a 5-year flow out, putting money against that each year, didn't we, at that
Each year for 5
CIP
years.
meeting?
I think we did, yeah. I don't
Okay.
remember the specifics.
And that's what I would recommend as well, is kind of evaluating this every 5 years. Next, I'll get into just kind of a high-level overview of the adopted capital improvement program and where those projects currently stand. So as you can see, for fiscal year 25, we had about $23 million for various CIP projects. And when you break them into the different categories, similar to what we looked at for our damage assessment, you can see a majority of that is to streets and wastewater. And this just those same numbers shown in the pie chart format. So going into facilities, Fire Station 22, again, that design for that already planned project is still underway. Our Public Works roof, again, that project, the design is complete, and we're proposing to complete those roof improvements at the same time as doing the storm repair work. And then the HVAC project for City Hall, that has not started yet. And then we had budgeted for a design of the Public Works building, and that has not started yet either. The HVAC, I would recommend that we plan on doing this project in fiscal year 25. The Public Works building, that may need to be reconsidered to push out, just given the conflicting priorities we have with other repairs that are needed. Some of our marine structures, the 29th and 36th Avenue seawall, those are in progress. The 29th Avenue seawall project is complete, and the 36th Avenue seawall project is proposed to go out to bid. That 36th Avenue was in rough shape before the storm, but sustained some additional damage and is in emergency need of repair. our rec center seawall. This was one that didn't sustain as much damage from the storm as some of the other ones, but we do have some active grants, one for design from FEMA and another for construction from DEP. So I'm recommending that we proceed with administering that grant and start on the design of that project, since we do have some alternative funding sources dedicated.
Will that raise it up to the minimum recommended 5 feet above sea level?
Correct, yep.
And is that going to be the live seawall?
Right now, we are proposing to make it a living shoreline. As we get into design, there may be some constraints there with the extent of that just due to the depth of the bay. So that's what that living shoreline looks like is to be determined, but that is the goal, is to create a living shoreline and kind of let that area be almost like a demonstration project to kind of guide, future seawall projects moving forward. The Pass-a-Grille Way seawall, we have not started on. We had budgeted $237 for that next phase of design. So I would recommend continuing with that project and using funds through FEMA public assistance to make that larger project and construction come online sooner than later. The dune walkovers, as I mentioned, we have put that out to bid for the walkover replacements. Priority-wise, compared to some of the other improvements we need to make, that's not the highest on the list, but it is a project we are moving forward with. As well as the First Avenue Fishing Pier. That was a project that was open prior to the storm and hadn't been closed out yet, so we'll be requesting extension on those permits so we can finish out that project as we also work through the storm repairs. Operations, just repairing some of our, I think we had in here to replace one of our fire trucks and then upgrade some of our IT equipment. So we are moving forward with those budgeted CIP projects. Parks and Recreation, the community center pool, resurfacing that is in progress, and we plan to move forward with that project in fiscal year 25. The playground equipment project has not started yet. And the Egan Park project has not started yet as well. One thing I think that's important to note about Egan Park is that project was proposed to look at adding some like pickleball courts and repurposing some of that open space area out there. I think after this storm, it's pretty evident that we should keep that space dedicated as open space because we're going to need it was fully used as our debris storage site. So I would not recommend removing that open space and actually repurposing these funds to help with some remediation of that site. So right now we've reached out to DEP to close. That's who we permitted with for that debris management site. So we're working through the closeout process with them. We're going to have a geotechnical engineer perform soil sampling throughout the area so we can determine what remediation work is needed. I don't foresee much needed other than replacing some ground soil and then placing new sod and restabilizing the area. So I would recommend that we use these funds as needed to resod that field and bring it back to pre-storm conditions. And then Lazarillo Park, that funding was dedicated to replace the lighting on the tennis courts. The purchase orders for that equipment have been issued and the contract has been awarded. So we would propose to move forward with that project. Reclaim water, we had some repair and replacement money budgeted as well as pig port installations. Those pig ports help with maintenance and inspections. We have not moved forward on those projects yet.
What's a pig port?
A pig port is pretty much a port that you can put a device. They call it a pig, but basically it's just like something that fits into the pipe that you can pressurize and send it through, so it'll clean out like any grit accumulation that's on the pipe itself. So it's a mechanism that you have to have the port that you can put that device into and then another port that you can take it out of.
It's kind of like opening the top of your water bottle
Yeah.
and then putting something in the pipe and then pushing it through the pipe.
Oh, interesting.
So that'll help us clean the pipe, but without those pig ports installed, we can't perform that work. So it'll help with long-term asset management and help extending the useful life of the infrastructure we do have.
Okay.
Stormwater, the watershed management plan, I think that's going to be a crucial piece to get accomplished this year, because that's going to really drive some of the policy, planning, and engineering guidelines for our stormwater projects moving forward. We do plan on putting that out to bid here shortly and getting a consultant on board to conduct that study. The next 3 projects are stormwater outfall repairs in the Don Cesar area and the Bella Vista area. And those projects are progressing and are currently under design right now. So we have a consultant on board that is working through those projects. We would anticipate all of those moving into the construction phase this fiscal year. Pass-a-Girl Way tie check valves, that project has not started. We're proposing to take a task order for the engineering design to our city commission in February here, so we can get started on the design of that project.
Is that going to help alleviate some of the flooding like around 29th Avenue?
What this project will do is right now we have tie check valves already installed. I think they were put back when that roadway project was done, and they're at the outfall end of the pipe. Where they're susceptible to marine growth, but also make it difficult for our staff to maintain. Really, they're what's that? The barnacles, and really like this time of year is when we have the tides that are low enough where we can actually get in to do it. Otherwise, you have to get commercial divers out there. So since they've been installed, we haven't done a great job of maintaining those. So what this project is proposing to do is take those tie check valves off of the pipe end, bring them further upstream in the road, so our maintenance crews can bring their trucks, drive right up to them, open up a vault, and maintain the vaults, maintain the tie check valve there. So ease of maintenance. And then we're also proposing to install baffle boxes. What those baffle boxes will do will help with water quality, to help trap some of the debris and sediment that's into the system will get trapped in that box before it goes to our tie check valve. Because that's another faulty part of those tie check valves is, a piece of debris comes in and gets it clogged out. Well, now that, now it's not holding back that tide water anymore. So try to catch that debris before it gets to those valves.
Knowing that those tie check valves help keep the road stabilized, I think that's probably something that needs to be prioritized so we don't wind up having another undermined Pass-a-Girl Way. We built that big road, it took a lot and everything like that. I think everything we can do to make sure that we don't undermine our own work already is something we need to look at.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. And with this project, since it is, a retrofit, the design phase of this won't take very long, so I would anticipate that we'll get into construction on this project this fiscal year. And 45th Avenue drainage, again, that is one that's under design now too. This project proposes a pump station, so this will be one of the first pump stations we see in that Lido area to help alleviate some of the ponding. It's the grade elevations on the road in that area. Even after a storm event, you'll see water pooling up for a while, so the idea here is to help alleviate some of that standing water. And the funding for that 45th Avenue is just for design. The construction of that will be around $2 million, so that'll be something we have to program over time.
And since that's a state road, the state won't take care of that?
No, it's that portion of it is local.
Okay.
And it's titled 45th Way, but it also is like Plaza Way. First, yeah,
All right, thank
yeah. Next, to get into our streets, so our street rehabilitation program, that's our annual city mill and resurfacing of our roadways. With that one, just last week, we had a consultant drive all of our roads to get updated pavement condition assessment. So the last time that was done was back in 2020. But basically, they have technology where they can evaluate the condition of asphalt, and then that will allow us to prioritize what roads need to be mill and repaved first. So that effort just got completed. So once we get that data back, our Public Works team will analyze that and then prioritize the roads for resurfacing. And then we're also putting out the project to bid for contractors to be that'll do that mill and resurfacing work. And that'll be a 3-year contract with 2 options for 1-year extension. So we plan on having that in place for a while here. Gulf Boulevard undergrounding. That one is continuing. We just approved a task order at the last commission meeting for bid phase services of the next phase of that project. And we do have Penny for Pinellas funding that is specifically dedicated for that project. So our goal is to work through the bid phase of phase 2, put that project out to bid, see what those numbers come back with, and then determine if the remaining Penny for Pinellas money is enough to progress with that, or if we need to program city funding to help supplement to move that project along. Alleyway maintenance program, we're proposing to reconstruct the alleyways on 7th and 8th Avenue down in Paso Grill. The design for that is completed, and we're ready to put that project out to bid here shortly. Boca Ciega Drive and Gulf Winds Drive, both of these projects were designed, completed, and permitted and put out for bid for construction. And then when those construction bids were taken to the City Commission for approval, my understanding is they were denied at that time.
Yes.
Before the storms, our plan was to bring these projects back up to the commission to see what design changes they would like to see, if any. And then we would continue that. So I think the $200,000 that was budgeted was in anticipation of any redesign efforts that would be needed. But both of these projects, the bids came out over $5 million for each of them. So what we have, programmed currently isn't enough to move forward with either of those projects. Boca Ciega does have an FDOT grant for it. That expires this September, so I would be planning on requesting an extension to that grant to see if we can get that moved. But both of these roads are beyond their useful life and really do need to be replaced. So I recommend we prioritize these in our capital program moving forward.
And another good reason to reprioritize those is those are a little bit of relief for the north side of our city, relief as far as traffic and things like that. So, I witnessed a couple of accidents on Gulf Boulevard, shut down traffic flow, and so those relief avenues, if you will, provide another way for, let's say, an ambulance or emergency service vehicle to go ahead and get further south. So I think that you're absolutely right. Those should be prioritized a little bit higher to have that, because otherwise we got one way up and down.
That's a great point. So yeah, as I mentioned before these storms, that was kind of our plan, was we were going to approach the commission in September and ask for direction on how to move forward with those. So that's a task that we still need to accomplish here. And then our wastewater. So we had some money dedicated for inflow and infiltration rehabilitation. This was work that was prioritized the last time that we had a full televising and inspection of our stormwater system. My recommendation would be that we use the funds from that inflow and infiltration rehabilitation, as well as the sewer system cleaning and televising, to try and move forward that full system-wide project. So if FEMA doesn't 100% fund those projects, that we have some CIP money that we can leverage to try and move those forward. And then the results of that sewer system cleaning and televising will drive the prioritization of the inflow and infiltration rehab for the next 5 years. And then, we plan on doing that every 5 years. Force Main 1, that $40,000 budgeted, that is to complete the remainder of that preliminary engineering design analysis. So I expect that to be wrapped up here in the next couple months, and then we'll be presenting the different route alternatives to our city commission for further direction, and then planning to move forward with the design after that. Air release valve installation. The purpose of that is that some of the high points in our force main, just to relieve some of the air and gas pressure, and that'll help with grit buildup in the pipe system long term. And then our Pump Station 1 rehabilitation project that's currently in process. So just to briefly cover, we got a lot of projects in our CIP, and we got a lot of storm damage. So, we got to take one bite out of the elephant at a time. And these are kind of our top priorities to move forward with. So I think our wastewater system and our stormwater system are the top two priorities. And then after that, I would highlight our critical facilities, our fire station, community center, as well as our public services building. And then next in line would fall in line that Golfway roadway, and then our various seawalls and coastal structures. So these are the top four priorities as we're working through scheduling inspections with FEMA and moving forward. And I'd welcome any further comments or questions.
I have a comment for you. Thank you. Thanks for being upfront and giving us a realistic look at what our system's capacities are, the status of them, as I know all of us are kind of concerned about adding additional, if you will, use to our systems and things like that. So appreciate the briefing that you've come and given us and answering some of these questions so that we can get back and advise our commissioners and such so that they're more informed. And I would say it's nice, and hopefully you can give a status on these things, because I think it's critical. We've seen that our systems were undermined by the storms. They need to be the resiliency that you described to us. But I think the commissioners and the rest of the residents that live here and the businesses that function here also need to understand what the situation is, so that they understand, hey, we're moving forward with this, but it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of capital to get to where we should be so that things continue to function. So thanks.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot, and we do at the next upcoming commission meeting, when we do our standing storm recovery effort priority, we will be presenting on some of the status update on the priority projects from that last slide and kind of where the status of those stand.
Good.
I'll add one more thing. How do we help you, and how do you get information to us on more than a quarterly, we only get a chance to meet quarterly. And part of our job would be to advise and things like that, because, we have a part-time commission and things like that. So hopefully, the five of us that sit here as appointees can help to guide them and have a little bit more expertise. I'm going to look at John here again and thank him for his years of service here, because he understands our systems, how they have been, built over the years, the capacities and things like that. If we build more knowledge within the base of those decision makers, I think we all benefit, because we can look at the expenses, we can understand the system's priorities and such, and then also give our advice as we look at this in more of a microscope and then advise. But we would need to see, these statuses and things like that, and I would ask if you could get those to us, maybe a report or a synopsis, so that we can have a time to digest that, to look over it. I mean, I've got all kinds of notes that I want to make sure that I capture for the next meeting, and it also helps to reinforce when you're speaking with the commissioner that we've already kind of pre-briefed them based on our quarterly meeting. When they go into the next meeting, we've kind of given them a little bit of insight as to what you're saying, so it's not brand new, and maybe they have some other questions that they can foresee further down the road.
No, I appreciate that, and that's something that I would appreciate to have as well. I have the engineering and capital program knowledge, but you guys have the institutional knowledge of being here longer than I have. So I'd appreciate any insights and advice that you guys have.
John does.
No, you do too.
But I'd be open to whatever you guys prefer. My goal is to put together not just the 5-term plan, but a 10-year plan. Working hand in hand with Andrew and our finance team, but going through all the different components. So right now we have a pretty good long-range plan for our wastewater system, really planned out to 2032 on what is in that. So I want to make sure all of those projects identified in that are getting presented to you guys when you're evaluating the capital program before those, budget committee meetings. So our goal is, we recently collected the data on the roadways, so we'll be prioritizing our street resurfacing projects. We already have a pretty good grasp on what our needs are on wastewater. We have a lot of studies on stormwater, but they need to be married up together, which I think will be accomplished with that watershed management plan. And then the last pieces would be the seawalls, which we do have a long-term analysis. So I want to bring all of these studies together. And then when we're presenting the capital program to you guys, you're seeing the full picture of everything that needs to be done, which it will be a lot of projects, and then we can kind of break it down from there on how we're going to make it feasible. But I want to take everything from the planning studies that we have and put that into the program, so you guys are seeing that full picture when you're evaluating it.
Oh, I think our job here, finance and budget, I don't mean to speak for everybody, I kind of look at this and say, okay, I'm not here to make policy decisions. We're here to guide, and if we don't have a full understanding of what you're working on and what those costs will be, then we can't provide any kind of advice or anything to the commission. So anything that you produce that has to do with finance and budget, if we could be, I'm more than happy to get that emailed to me along with whoever else through the city, because it helps me digest and then come more prepared to participate and once again provide guidance to the commission.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I have one comment. We're depending a lot on FEMA support money. I have a concern that the existing government in Washington may make dramatic changes to FEMA that could impact all our plans, and that's an unknown, but it's real.
It is real.
Let's hope it doesn't happen. Anything else? We are adjourned.
All right.